Welcome along to Film Talk. I'm Richard Edwards, and I'm delighted to say we're joined yet again by the wonderful Mark Priest. Mark, welcome back to Film Talk. Good to see you.
Delighted to be here again, Richard. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure, and always a pleasure, in fact, because we're talking about one of our favourite films, one of the greatest films of all time, certainly in our opinion, and that's the great film franchise that is Ghostbusters.
Hello, Ghostbusters. You have?
They're here.
What an amazing, amazing film. Ghostbusters from 1984, the first. It's just an amazing movie, isn't it?
Oh, it's one of my favourite films, absolutely. I remember being hooked. I remember the music, of course. I'm sure we'll talk about that briefly. But it stirred my interest because I remember reading that Dan Aykroyd had written most of the script, and he loved Abbott and Costello and Bob Hope, and he wanted to create some of those old Ghostbuster type movies of the 40s and 50s. So it grabbed my attention, even reading about this before it even got released. And it's one of my favorite films, and some of the one-liners and some of the comedy in it is fantastic. If you haven't seen it recently, it's worth watching again because it's just timeless. Even for 1984, you know, it was a great film then, but it still holds its worth even now.
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
All right, that's bad. Okay. All right, important safety tip. Thanks, Egon.
So it's created by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis.
Yes, I think they were the original writers, along with Reitman, I think it was.
Well, Ivan Reitman, he was probably one of the writers too, wasn't he? But he also directed the film, which is and also the second film too.
Yes,
but it's Dan and Harold starred in the film along with an absolutely stellar cast, isn't it? I mean,
wonderful.
Bill Murray,
one of my favourites. You know, he's so droll, and his timing is perfect. It's making me smile just thinking about some of the one-liners he says in the film, which are hilarious and even borderline sort of risky, even for nowadays, for what was deemed as a sort of a PG film. It was great fun. It appealed to young people, but it appealed to adults as well, very much so. And Sigourney Weaver. She looks fantastic in this film. She is fantastic. One of my favourite actresses. Brilliant. She's so sexy and so lovely, and she plays the part perfectly. It's perfect for her. Very, very good indeed.
And you're talking of one-liners. There is the classic one-liner when she's possessed by Zulu.
That's
she
right.
says, "Do you want this body?" And Bill Murray's character says,
"Is that a trick question?" Or there seems to be a few people in there already.
That's right. Yeah, there's another one.
Yes.
You want this body?
Is this a trick question?
Stick. Hold. Beat him up.
Ernie Hudson too. We also forget Ernie Hudson.
Yeah. No,
one of the
absolutely.
Ghostbusters himself.
Yeah.
Because Rick Moranis was one of the residents in the tower block, wasn't he?
That's
where
right.
Sigourney Weaver was living. But
yeah. He plays a good part in it as well, actually. And he's a bit of a nerd, isn't he, as a character? And obviously loves Sigourney Weaver. And keeps trying to invite her over to his apartment, which he incidentally keeps locking himself out of the door as well because he's just a bit dumb. But there's a great scene as well where a bit further on in the movie where one of the phantoms, which is a dog, gets into his apartment. He doesn't realise, and there's a party going on. And he's get there, and I feel like I'm almost doing the movements of the party because it's kind of a naff party. And he takes the coats from a couple of new guests, and he throws them into the back room. And there's this demon growling in the corner, and he closes the door and says, "Okay, who brought the dog?" You have to see it, but it is a funny moment. He plays the part really well. And another great, as we're just talking of one-liners, when Sigourney Weaver is clearly possessed, and she comes, Bill Murray comes to the front door, of her apartment, knocks on the door, and she very seductively standing there at the door saying, "Are you the key master?" And he says, "No." So she slams the door in his face. And then he rings the bell again, and she opens the door, and she's the same provocative pose. "Are you the key master?" "Yes, I am." So she comes into the apartment. It's great fun, really good fun. There's loads of gags throughout the movie, but it's got its other elements to it as well. It's actually quite an exciting, tense film as well at times. Lots of atmosphere, and lots of spooks, and great fun.
The special effects for 1984, I thought the special effects were pretty amazing, actually. Absolutely,
yeah, for sure. And the green slime character, that looked really real. I remember at the time, and even now watching it again, it doesn't look it doesn't look that bad at all. So it's good.
We've rewatched. It's interesting you say that because we've rewatched the films for this recording, and the effects still look, despite all the wonderful CGI you get today, almost 35 years later. It's still 35, 37 years later. They still hold up really, really well. It's still a very compelling, visually very impactful movie.
I agree, and I always say this, don't I, that you have to imagine audiences watching this 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and they would have just never seen anything like this before. So yes, it's compared to more latter-day CGI, it doesn't quite hit the notch, but it's still extremely good and very immersive in the characters and also in the spooks and the activities that go on. Great fun.
Now, like all great movies, there's a sequel, and sometimes the sequels are really, really good. And so in 1989, the imaginatively titled Ghostbusters II came out. I've been watching the DVDs, 1 and 2, great films. And I watched 2 again just a couple of days ago and loved it. Great film. Loved it, in many ways, but it just didn't seem to have the energy and flow and originality of the first film.
The Titanic just arrived.
When ghosts start arriving by the boatload,
we gotta find the guys.
There's only one thing to do.
Look out! Look out! Sometimes weird things happen.
Absolutely, that's my opinion as well. Some good special effects, some good lines, but it just didn't have the va-va-voom of the first film. I mean, frankly, they obviously were paid an awful lot of money to put that on the second film, and they were kind of just doing it for the money, I'm sure. But it just didn't have the sort of passion that you got from the first movie. Well worth watching. Great sound effects as well. If you've got a great, sound system at home, it's worth notching it up because the sound effects are really, really good. So there's a lot going for it, but it's just it isn't quite as good as the first one.
As a story, didn't quite hold up. No, that's true.
No, it could have been even better because there is, that the character that's the Norse character coming back to life is actually quite scary, actually. And they could have just done a lot more with that. I just wanted to mention, actually, Richard, not just the music of Ray Parker, with the Ghostbusters theme, but of course Elmer Bernstein wrote the music for Ghostbusters because it's got a great soundtrack behind all this as well. And again, if you're watching it again for another time, it's worth just the music is actually very, very good as well. So there's quality films in both sets of movies.
Yeah, didn't we see an Elmer Bernstein concert at the Royal Albert Hall a few years ago?
We did. Yeah, we did actually. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think he put Ghostbusters on the set, but that was a great show, really great.
He did do Great Escape on that concert, though, I do remember, and that was
that's right. It was wonderful.
We digress. But the music is consistently great across both films.
Yes.
As are the special effects, great one-liners, great setting, great originality in the concept, but a really good first story and a not so strong, quite laggy second story.
Yes.
I thought.
Yeah, it's such a shame. And what was also a shame was that Bill Murray, after making the first film, he actually didn't make a movie for 4 or 5 years because I think he kind of felt that he'd actually achieved this phenomenon and was delighted with it and wasn't really sure if he wanted to go back into film. So I know he made Scrooged, which brought him back into mainstream films. And then the next one was Ghostbusters II, which really didn't give him the right platform. It was good, but it wasn't good enough, I don't think. And
then talking of, I'm not sure if it's a sequel, is it, or a spin-off? Not even a spin-off, a reboot. I think that's the word, a reboot. Yes. So 17 years after the second film. And there are those who say you've had 17 years to get it right, and look what you created. Was Ghostbusters in 2016 with a really interesting cast. Let me check my list. So Melissa McCarthy, who is incredibly funny. Let's be honest.
Good.
You know, a really good cast. Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, Leslie Jones.
Oh, she's brilliant, Leslie Jones. Yeah,
Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, brilliant. It's a great cast.
A really good cast,
Yeah. There's lots of odd cameos in there as well, which are really good to see.
Most of the original Ghostbusters crew.
That's right.
Dan Aykroyd was in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Alice Cooper. It's just that you have to look for these bits, but they're all in there. And there's some really standout parts to that film. Actually, I like that all the women in the lead parts were great. I thought it was hilarious where Chris Hemsworth turns up to be their PA or the secretary.
And the interview.
The interview.
So are you? Are you? I'm not sure it's legal to even ask those questions.
That's right. Are you seeing anybody? That's right.
My name is Erin Gilbert, Doctor of Particle Physics. That stuff went everywhere, by the way, in every crack.
And I really like the scenes in the theatre where they've got this rock concert going on, and when this green devil comes out of the stage while the lead singer is singing, and he's flying around, and the audience are going wild because they think it's all part of the show. And this devil's flying around, and eventually smacks straight into the front and into the lead singer, and smashes him into the speakers. It's actually hilarious. It really is really funny. And it's another great set piece. So I think I know what you're going to say. It's got lots of good ingredients, and as a standalone film, if we've never seen the other ones before, probably would have worked. But it was up a bit.
I think
too much competition.
Work. I think it really does work as a standalone film if you've not watched the others.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you see a lot of criticism online about the reboot, you're seeing criticism about an all-female cast, which seems a bit of a bizarre thing to criticize. But everyone's making comparisons to the first film, and the first film is just so wonderful. But it's inevitable you are going to make those comparisons. So for a new audience, 30 odd years later, 32 years after the first film came out, then who aren't so wedded to that, because for you and me and for millions of other people, Ghostbusters in 1984, it's part of our heritage, it's part of our upbringing, it's part of our character, it's formative for us in our younger and slimmer years. Whereas from other people in 2016, the Melissa McCarthy version is probably the one they would attach to. So if you're thinking about it as different audiences, if you can break the two apart and look at them in that perspective, I think the second one does work as a standalone film for a new audience. But for us who are comparing it to the previous film, it's difficult. You have to try and separate the two, I think.
It's one of the great shames of modern times that critics and critical platforms have got so much say on new films when they come out. They can really make or break a movie, and you're very often they're at the mercy of one individual with an opinion that doesn't match your or mine. And we've been to many films, haven't we, where the critics have rubbished this film, but actually it's actually really good, and you really enjoy it. And we have to see beyond the critics sometimes, and I don't think we do. I'm not sure the younger generation perhaps do as much as they should do, because that's a good example. That film was rubbished for the wrong reasons, really wrong.
Before
reasons.
it was even released, people hadn't even seen it.
Exactly.
And were rubbishing it. And you think, well, that doesn't seem terribly fair.
Yeah, and the female cast are actually really good, really funny, and play those parts really well. It is a shame. I enjoy it. There's no doubt about it, and there's some really good scenes. Well worth watching.
And then to bring it all the way up to date, like all these ghostly things, there's an afterlife of some description, quite appropriately, because Ghostbusters Afterlife, a new Ghostbusters movie, is due out in November 2021, later this year. And the trailer is out and looks really exciting, don't you think?
Very good. If anybody hasn't seen the trailer yet, do look at it on YouTube. If the trailer is a reflection of what the movie's going to be like, I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's got a lot of qualities there, and clearly some of the old Ghostbusters are going to be in the movie as well. But the premise looks really good. It's a great trailer. It's really quite exciting. I've watched it a couple of times now, and with the special effects that we were talking about earlier, 40 years on, we'll probably see something that's going to be, very, very good. I'm actually going to be looking forward to seeing it very much.
Why'd you bring me up here?
Entertainment value?
What is that?
I don't know.
It feels like an original story. It's certainly from what we know from the write-ups, the articles, and the trailer. And it's difficult to judge when you haven't seen the film. But, it's written and directed in part written by, but directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, who was responsible for the original two films.
Correct.
Ivan Reitman is producing, or is one of the producers, for Afterlife. So it's got a lot of the heritage. But I mean, just looking at some of the cast, you've got, McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, Paul Rudd, modern day, well-known actors. But going back in history, I mean, look at some of so Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, Annie Potts, who was the receptionist in the original films as well. There's a lot of really good, really strong heritage, but it's about these young kids who move to an out of the way, in the middle of nowhere, on a giant farm somewhere, an old house with a well, and there's rumblings going on, even though it's not anywhere near any kind of fault lines or fracking. There's all these kind of earthquakes going on. Something's below ground, something's causing all this rumbling. And suddenly we discover that all the connections with the Ghostbusters heritage.
Well,
what's really going on? Wow.
You presume that they are the grandchildren of at least some of the Ghostbusters. You're not sure who that is, and the mother is obviously the daughter of perhaps one of the Ghostbusters. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. I'm actually really looking forward to it. And actually, I love the scene in the trailer where they find the Ecto-1 car hidden in the garage, which is one of my favorite cars. Actually, it's just brilliant. I love Ecto-1. And
they're driving it around this little town, and the kid's in the back seat, and suddenly slides out. There's a gunner's seat. This is amazing.
That's it. Yeah, it's really good, really exciting. Yeah, very good.
So it looks really promising. And that's one to look forward to, and that's more of the original Ghostbusters crew, the original Ghostbusters heritage, unlike the 2016 reboot, which was directed by Paul Feig, but with a good cast and a good film all the same. But this seems to be going back to their roots, and that looks very promising. Ghostbusters Afterlife in November 2021. Yeah. So I mean, we could talk for days, weeks about Ghostbusters and what it means, but all in all, it's a really good, thoroughly entertaining film franchise. Second film, not quite so strong, but great music, great effects, great acting, great characters. It's just thoroughly entertaining all the way through, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it just, as I said right at the beginning, it reminds me of the sort of the Bob Hope type of movies, the Abbott and Costello movies, where it's a comedy to a point, but actually there's a seriousness about it. And there's a plot there that keeps you enthralled all the way through the movie. And all in all, it's a great package.
Do tell us what you think and leave some comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit that little bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.